Good morning! I keep going on rants, so I'm gonna shut up and try to focus and do this a little bit more organized. So anyway, I have an extra video for you today because I kind of had an accidental discovery about my process yesterday. I wanted to share it with you in case you wanted to use it, since we still have a little bit more time before Camp Nano starts. And if you're struggling prepping for Camp Nano, this might be a thing to consider and maybe try if you're out of ideas. So, as I had mentioned earlier in one of my other videos, I was going to be using the Save the Cat method for plotting this Camp Nano. Well, that didn't happen because I was reviewing the Save the Cat method. I had the beats written out on a sheet. I went back through the book to... My dog's jingling. I apologize. He's like wandering around. Hi, Vady. Anyway, I was reviewing them and I was like trying to come up with the outline by the plot that's in Save the Cat, and I wasn't liking it. I was not digging it. I'm like, this seems... It was making a slideshow syndrome, which if you're not familiar with, it's kind of when you get stuck on a certain formula for a plot and you're just filling in events that fit that formula, whether or not they have connectivity to the previous scene, or the previous chapter or whatever, the previous beat, whether or not they're a logical progression. And then you end up with kind of this thing where it's like, and this happens, oh, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. And it doesn't flow very well. And I realized after about the fifth beat, I'm like, this is not working for me. And I'm like, screw it, because I kind of already know a little bit about the story. I kind of have an idea of where I want it to begin, and I kind of know where I sort of need it to be in the middle, but I didn't know where the end was. And I was like, screw it, I'm pantsing it. I'm pantsing the outline. Now, I don't know if I've gone into this a lot in the past as to my outline. In the past, usually what I do is I do bullet point events that happen in the story, which again kind of falls under that slideshow problem. And I noticed that on my last book, and I had to do some smoothing out because of it. It was a pain in the butt. This time, what I decided that I was going to do is avoid the bullet points. I wasn't going to keep in mind really any particular plot structure or anything like that. I was going to completely pants it, and I was going to do a chapter by chapter summary and then just base each next chapter off of what would be the logical progression of this character and these events and so on and so forth. And I ended up doing that. Not only did it go insanely fast, because like I mentioned, I think, I can't remember if I mentioned this in one of my other videos that I tried shooting this morning or today. My outline ended up being 8,236 words. So it's basically a zero draft, because what I did is I summarized chapter by chapter what's going to happen, what the characters are going to do, so on and so forth, and all that jazz. So I have, and one thing I really liked about this, that I kind of wish I had discovered earlier when I was doing my other books, is that this gives me a fantastic bird's eye view of the entire story, because I can realize in chapter 23 or something that I need to establish something way, way, way earlier in the book. Or as I did realize in chapter like 21, when I was summarizing it, I'm like, oh, I need to add more scenes earlier on where this character goes home, like at night. He can't just stay at the hospital all day. I mean, I know he's in the on-call room at one point, because there's things happening with his patients and he can't predict if something else is going to come up and he's worried, but he has to go home, like eventually he has to have like a day off. And I'm like, oh, that means I've got to establish more about his wife, and I've got to do this. So I added a little note at that point saying, go back to the beginning, add this in revisions in the outline. And it is so much easier to add it in revisions in a 8,000 word outline than it is in a 65,000, 70,000, 100,000 word novel, when you realize, because you don't have a bird's eye view and you had to go to beta readers to realize this because you're too close to the project, that this thing needed to happen and that you needed to add weekends in or something. So I have just loved doing this, just pantsing the outline, but having it be almost like a zero draft outline where I know everything that happens in the story. Now I just have to draft it with prose, essentially. That basically got the thrill of pantsing and not knowing what's going to happen, And now I have exactly what I just needed to draft. So it was kind of fun, and it gave me that like instant gratification of every time I figured out what I was gonna do for the next chapter. That's why I like outlining the best, I think, because there's a faster progression of ideas and kind of epiphanies and stuff throughout the story than there is if I was just drafting it from a bullet point outline or something like that. I'd maybe have like one epiphany a day instead of one every 5 minutes. So I finished super early though. And that's why I'm adjusting my Camp Nano goal. Sorry, I'm like so disorganized. This is sadly one of the best takes I've had so far. You might want to try this if you're running into that problem where you're feeling like your plot is a little bit too formulaic, or you're feeling a little bit constricted by specific beats in whatever plot structure you're choosing to use. Maybe try pantsing the outline and then doing what I'm going to be doing today with revisions, where I'm going to be looking at the Save the Cat method as well as other plot structures to see which one actually best fits my story. And then I'm just going to kind of check to see if my story's missing anything important so that I can add that in revisions. And that way it's more that I already know what my story is. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything that will make the plot weaker. And that I don't have anything that's unnecessary either. And I think that's going to be a better way of doing it. I've already kind of like looked over my outline and realized that I kind of subconsciously already had it fit a specific plot structure. And I was like, wow, maybe pantsing isn't so bad, but I think I'd still rather do it on this level where it's easier to revise rather than having to do an entire book, because that seems like a pain. I'd rather catch all the big stuff now at 8,000 words, like I mentioned. So I'm gonna let you know how that goes when I look at whether or not I'm missing some important elements. I feel like my climax might be a little bit, but I think that I could tell that that's gonna have, that's gonna depend on how I do it in the draft. How I build the tension in that chapter and stuff. Because right now it's just a summary. I don't have any of the fancy words. I don't have the build up when things are happening. And it's not a typical climax, which I think is what's throwing me off. We'll talk about that more later because I'm starting to ramble a little bit. But maybe try that if you still don't have your outline done, or you're getting stuck trying to follow particular beats in a plot structure. Maybe try just pantsing the outline and then double checking a plot structure for any beats that you might have missed that would be important to have a strong plot. That's what I'm going to try, and that's what we're doing. So today I am devoting to figuring out some of my other side characters and doing some revisions on my outline that I already know need to happen. And I've got extra time because I had scheduled 7 days for that, and I wrote 8,236 words in 4 days. So I'm so much faster at outlining than I am at drafting. It's sad. But anyway, now I get to do revisions on it, and then maybe I can dive into the next outline for the second book before April starts instead of when April starts, like I'd kind of been planning. And maybe I will be able to get more like 30 to 31,000 words done or more in April on the first book, because I finished this outline 3 days early. So we will see. Anyway, I'm gonna quit rambling. That was just something that I kind of realized about my own process that I wanted to share in case you wanted to try it, or you're finding yourself being a little bit stuck later on, either today or some other day this week. I can't promise because it really depends on when I have time. I plan on doing a video about some insecurities / fears of being a writer that might be plaguing you, and I know they've plagued me, and some cures that I found for those. These are going to be ones that I haven't seen as much of. I've definitely seen videos on that topic, but I always feel a little bit like a weirdo when I watch those because I'm like, that's not my fear at all. I don't have that problem, but I do have this other one. So I wanted to talk about those and see if maybe those are helpful for anybody out there. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up, I'm gonna get off this, and you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.